The winter of 1987 arrived early in Silvlak Village. Snow buried the narrow roads. The pine forests surrounding the village stood silent beneath thick layers of ice. During the day, the place looked peaceful. At night, it became something else entirely. The villagers had an old rule: never answer a voice calling your name from the forest after sunset. Nobody explained why. Nobody needed to. The elders would simply stare into the darkness beyond the village fences and whisper, "Some things wear a human voice." Isak Plovik had heard the warning his entire life. At 32 years old, he considered it nothing more than an old superstition. That was before the winter, when people began disappearing. The first victim was a hunter named Mikhail. He left before dawn and never returned. 3 days later, villagers found his rifle leaning against a frozen tree deep inside the forest. The rifle was covered in frost. There were no footprints, no blood, no signs of struggle. Just one strange thing. Wrapped around the barrel was a bundle of long gray hair, human hair. The village priest burned it immediately. No one spoke about it afterward, but fear spread. A week later, another person vanished, then another, then another. Every victim disappeared after hearing someone call their name. A daughter heard her dead mother singing outside her window. A shepherd heard his brother asking for help in the woods. An old woman heard her husband, who had been dead for 20 years. Every voice sounded real. Every voice belonged to someone they loved. And every person who followed it vanished forever. One evening, Isak sat inside the village town. The wind screamed outside. Snow struck the windows like handfuls of gravel. Around him, nervous villagers whispered. A trembling old man named Victor leaned closer. I heard him. The room fell silent. Nobody asked who, the witch. Victor's eyes were wide with terror. She was standing outside my house. Did you see her? Someone asked. Victor nodded. I saw her reflection in the window. The villagers exchanged worried looks. You looked outside? No. Why not? Victor's face turned pale. Because her reflection was facing me. A horrible silence filled the tavern. Reflections should mirror reality. But according to Victor, the figure outside had been facing away from the house. Its reflection was looking directly at him and smiling. The next morning, Victor disappeared. His front door remained locked from the inside. The windows were frozen shut, yet the house was empty. On the kitchen table lay a single object, a wooden doll. The doll's face looked exactly like Victor. Fear consumed Silvlak Village. People nailed crosses above their doors. Children stopped leaving their homes. Even the animals seemed disturbed. Dogs barked at empty corners. Horses refused to enter the forest paths. Birds vanished entirely. The woods became unnaturally quiet. One night, Isak woke to a sound outside his cabin. Knock, knock, knock. He sat upright. The sound came from the front door. Slow, patient, deliberate. His lantern flickered. The room felt colder than usual. Knock, knock, knock. Who's there? He called. No answer, only silence. Then another knock. But suddenly, he remembered something his grandmother had once told him. If something knocks after midnight, look through the window first. Isak moved carefully toward the side window. His breath fogged the glass. Outside stood a woman, or something pretending to be one. She wore a ragged white dress despite the freezing temperature. Her long gray hair touched the snow. She stood perfectly still. Her face remained hidden. Isak felt his stomach tighten. Then he noticed something horrifying. The woman wasn't standing on the ground. She floated several inches above it. The knocking stopped. Slowly, the woman's head turned. Far too slowly. Far too far. Her neck twisted beyond human limits. 180 degrees. 200. 300. Bones cracked beneath her skin. Then she looked directly at him and smiled. Her mouth stretched from ear to ear, not naturally, as though someone had sliced her cheeks open. Isak stumbled backward. The lantern fell from his hand. When he looked back at the window, she was gone. The next morning he searched outside. There were no footprints, no tracks, nothing. Only one strange object, a wooden doll. This one looked exactly like him. For the first time in his life, Isak felt genuine fear. The stories were real. Something lived inside those forests. Something ancient. Something patient. He already knew his name. That evening, Isak visited the oldest woman in the village. Her name was Yelena. She was 90 years old and nearly blind. Many believed she knew secrets nobody else remembered. When Isak showed her the doll, her hands began shaking violently. "Where did you get this?" "Outside my house." Yelena immediately dropped it. The old woman's face became pale. "You must leave." "Leave where?" "Anywhere." "What is this thing?" For several moments she remained silent. Then she whispered, "The witch is choosing." A chill ran through Isak. Choosing what? Yelena's cloudy eyes filled with terror. The next face she wants to wear. The room became silent. Outside, the wind howled across Silvlak Village. Then came a sound from beyond Yelena's cabin. A woman's voice. Soft, gentle, almost loving. "Isak?" The old woman froze. The voice came again, closer this time. "Isak, come outside." His blood turned cold. He recognized the voice. It belonged to his mother. But she had been dead for 12 years. Yelena grabbed his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Do not answer." The voice continued, now directly outside the cabin. A scratching sound moved slowly across the wooden walls, like long fingernails, searching for a way inside. Then came laughter. Not human laughter. Something deeper, older, hungrier. The lantern flame suddenly died. Darkness swallowed the room. And from somewhere beyond the wall, something whispered, "I found you." The darkness inside Yelena's cabin felt alive. After the lantern died, neither Isak nor the old woman dared to move. Outside, something circled the cabin. Slow footsteps scraped through the snow. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound moved around the walls again and again, like a predator inspecting a cage. Then it stopped, directly outside the window. Neither of them breathed. Several seconds passed, then came a soft tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Not on the door, the glass, as though long fingernails were gently testing it. Yelena's trembling voice broke the silence. "Whatever happens, do not look." Isak stared at the floor. The tapping continued. Tap, tap, tap. Then came his mother's voice once more. Gentle, warm, exactly as he remembered. "Isak, please." Tears formed in his eyes. For a moment he almost forgot she had been dead for 12 years. The voice sounded so real, so close, so familiar. A horrible thought entered his mind. What if it really was her? What if somehow she had returned? The temptation grew stronger. Then he noticed something. The voice was wrong. Not the sound, not the tone, but breathing. His mother had suffered from a lung disease before she died. She always breathed slightly between words. His voice breathed perfectly. The imitation was flawless, but not flawless enough. Suddenly the tapping stopped. The silence became even worse. Minutes passed. Then the cabin door burst open. Cold air flooded inside. Isak jumped to his feet, but nobody stood there. Only darkness and falling snow. The thing outside was gone. Now. The next morning, Yelena finally told him the truth, or at least the part of the truth she knew. deaths, madness, and one name repeated again and again: the Winter Witch. According to the journals, the creature had haunted Silvlak Village for centuries. Nobody knew where it came from. Nobody knew if it had ever been human. The oldest record dated back to 1743. A hunter claimed he found a woman frozen inside the forest. She was buried beneath snow, but still alive. Villagers brought her home, fed her, sheltered her, protected her. Then, people began dying. Their bodies were discovered hanging upside down from trees, their faces missing. After weeks of terror, the villagers hunted the woman. They found her standing in the middle of the forest, smiling, surrounded by hundreds of crows. When they tried to kill her, she simply laughed. The journals claim she vanished into a snowstorm. From that day onward, she returned every few decades, always during the harshest winter, always when the village was weakest. But one entry terrified Isak more than the others: a diary written by a priest in 1819. The priest described finding several victims buried beneath the snow, not dead, alive, frozen, unable to move, unable to scream. Their eyes remained open, their hearts still beat, and every one of them had the same expression: pure terror, as though they had witnessed something so horrible that death itself refused to take them. That night, Isak returned home. His thoughts raced. The witch was real. The stories were real. And somehow she wanted him. But why? What made him different? He did not have long to wonder, because something was waiting inside his house. The moment he entered, he sensed it. The cabin felt wrong. Too quiet, too cold. His breath emerged in thick white clouds. The fireplace had gone out, yet he clearly remembered leaving it burning. Slowly he lit a lantern. The yellow light revealed the room. Nothing seemed unusual. Then he noticed the wall. Someone had written words across the wall. Hundreds of them. The same sentence repeated over and over. Using what looked like frozen blood. I remember your face. I remember your face. I remember your face. The words covered every surface: the ceiling, walls, furniture, even the floor. Fear surged through him. He turned toward the door and froze. A woman stood there, motionless, watching him. At first, he thought it was the witch. Then, realization struck. The woman was wearing his mother's face. Every detail was perfect. The eyes, the smile, the wrinkles, everything, except for one thing: the skin. It hung loosely, like a mask stretched over something else, something much larger, something struggling beneath. The figure smiled wider. The skin around its mouth began to move. Crack, crack. Its jaw opened impossibly wide. Inside was only darkness. No tongue, no teeth, no throat, just endless darkness. Then it spoke, but not with his mother's voice. Its true voice emerged, deep, ancient, like ice breaking across a frozen lake. Isak Plovik. The walls shook, the windows rattled. The creature took one step forward, then another. Its body unfolded unnaturally, limbs lengthening, bones snapping, growing taller, 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 until its head nearly touched the ceiling. Isak ran. He burst through the door and sprinted into the snowy night. Behind him came laughter, terrible laughter. The sound followed him through the village. He didn't stop until he reached the church. The heavy wooden doors slammed shut behind him. For several minutes, he gasped for breath. Then he heard a noise from beneath the church floor, a faint scratching. The village priest arrived carrying a lantern. His face looked exhausted. When Isak told him everything, the priest became pale. Without a word, he led him below the church, down a narrow staircase, into an underground chamber. The room contained dozens of wooden coffins. Some were ancient, Others appeared newer, much newer. The priest opened one. Isak nearly screamed. Inside lay a human body, perfectly preserved, frozen, eyes open, face twisted in terror. The corpse looked as though it had died yesterday, yet the priest explained it was over 80 years old. Then he opened another coffin, and another, and another. Every victim looked the same, frozen, terrified, unaging, waiting. At the far end of the chamber stood a final coffin, larger than the others. Its lid was sealed shut with iron chains. Ancient symbols covered the wood. The priest stared at it nervously. I hoped this day would never come. What is inside? Isak asked. The priest swallowed hard. Not what. What then? The old man slowly turned toward him. His face had become completely white. And then he whispered words that would haunt Isak forever. Who? Before Isak could ask another question, a loud crash echoed above them. The church bells began ringing violently on their own. The ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then came a woman's laughter. Not outside, not in the village, inside the church, directly above them. The witch had found them. This time, she was not alone. And the darkness inside Yolena's cabin felt alive. After the lantern died, neither Isak or the old woman dared to move. Outside, something circled the cabin. Slow footsteps scraped through the snow. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound moved around the walls again and again, like a predator inspecting a cage. Then it stopped, directly outside the window. Neither of them breathed. Several seconds passed. Then came a soft tap. Tap, tap, tap. Not on the door, on the glass, as though long fingernails were gently testing it. Yolena's trembling voice broke the silence. Whatever happens, do not look. Isak stared at the floor. The tapping continued. Tap, tap, tap. Then came this mother's voice once more. Gentle, warm, exactly as he remembered. Isak, please. Tears formed in his eyes. For a moment he almost forgot she had been dead for 12 years. The voice sounded so real, so close, so familiar. A horrible thought entered his mind. What if it really was her? What if somehow she had returned? The temptation grew stronger. Then he noticed something. The voice was wrong. Not the sound, not the tone, the breathing. His mother had suffered from a lung disease before she died. She always wheezed slightly between words. This voice breathed perfectly. The imitation was flawless, but not flawless enough. Suddenly the tapping stopped. The silence became even worse. Minutes passed. Then the cabin door burst open. Cold air flooded inside. Isak jumped to his feet. But nobody stood there. Only darkness and falling snow. The thing outside was gone. For now. The next morning, Yelena finally told him the truth, or at least the part of the truth she knew. The old woman led him to a hidden chest beneath her bed. Inside were ancient journals. Some were over 200 years old. The pages were yellow and fragile. Most contained records written by former villagers, accounts of disappearances, deaths, madness, and one name repeated again and again, the Winter Witch. According to the journals, the creature had haunted Silvlak Village for centuries. Nobody knew where it came from. Nobody knew if it had ever been human. The oldest record dated back to 1743. A hunter claimed he found a woman frozen inside the forest. She was buried beneath snow, but still alive. Villagers brought her home, fed her, sheltered her, protected her. Then people began dying. Their bodies were discovered hanging upside down from trees, their faces missing. After weeks of terror, the villagers hunted the woman. They found her standing in the middle of the forest, smiling, surrounded by hundreds of crows. When they tried to kill her, she simply laughed. The journals claim she vanished into a snowstorm. From that day on, apparition returned every few decades, always during the harshest winter, always when the village was weakest. One entry terrified Isak more than the others. A diary written by a priest in 1819. The priest described finding several victims buried beneath the snow, not dead, alive, frozen, unable to move, unable to scream. Their eyes remained open, their hearts still beat. Every one of them had the same expression, pure terror, as though they had witnessed something so horrible that death itself refused to take them. That night, Isak returned home. His thoughts raced. The witch was real. The stories were real. And somehow she wanted him. But why? What made him different? He did not have long to wonder. Because something was waiting inside his house. The moment he entered, he sensed it. The cabin felt wrong. Too quiet. Too cold. His breath emerged in thick white clouds. The fireplace had gone out. Yet he clearly remembered leaving it burning. Slowly he lit a lantern. The yellow light revealed the room. Nothing seemed unusual. Then he noticed the wall. Someone had written words across the wood. Hundreds of them. The same sentence repeated over and over. Using what looked like frozen blood. I remember your face. I remember your face. I remember your face. The words covered every surface. Ceiling, walls, furniture, even the floor. Fear surged through him. He turned toward the door and froze. A woman stood there, motionless, watching him. At first he thought it was the witch. Then realization struck. The woman was wearing his mother's face. Every detail was perfect. The eyes, the smile, the wrinkles, everything. Except for one thing, the skin. It hung loosely, like a mask stretched over something else, something much larger, something struggling beneath. The figure smiled wider. The skin around its mouth began tearing. Crack, crack, crack. Its jaw opened impossibly wide. Inside was only darkness. No tongue, no teeth, no throat, just endless darkness. Then it spoke, but not with his mother's voice. Its true voice emerged, deep, ancient, like ice breaking across a frozen lake. Isak Plovik. The walls shook. The windows rattled. The creature took one step forward, then another. Its body unfolded unnaturally, limbs lengthening, bones snapping, growing taller, 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 till its head nearly touched the ceiling. Isak ran. He burst through the door and sprinted into the snowy night. Behind him came laughter. Terrible laughter. The sound followed him through the village. He didn't stop until he reached the church. The heavy wooden doors slammed shut behind him. For several minutes he gasped for breath. Then he heard a noise from beneath the church floor. A faint scratching. The village priest arrived carrying a lantern. His face looked exhausted. When Isak told him everything, the priest became angry. Without a word, he led him below the church, down a narrow staircase, into an underground chamber. The room contained dozens of wooden coffins. Some were ancient, others appeared new, much newer. The priest opened one. Isak nearly screamed. Inside lay a human body, perfectly preserved, frozen, eyes open, face twisted in terror. The corpse looked as though it had died yesterday. Priest explained it was over 80 years old. Then he opened another coffin, and another, and another. Every victim looked the same, frozen, terrified, unaged, waiting. At the far end of the chamber stood a final coffin, larger than the others. Its lid was sealed shut with iron chains. Ancient symbols covered the wood. The priest stared at it nervously. I hoped this day would never come. What is inside? Isak asked. The priest swallowed hard. Not what. What then? The old man slowly turned toward him. His face had become completely white. And then he whispered words that would haunt Isak forever. Who? Before Isak could ask another question, a loud crash echoed above them. The church bells began ringing violently on their ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then came a woman's laughter. Not outside, not in the village, inside the church, directly above them. The witch had found them. And this time, she was not alone. End of part 2. The red eyes moved through the forest. Hundreds of them. Perhaps thousands. They floated between the trees like burning embers, watching, waiting. The snow-covered ground trembled beneath Isak's feet. The priest looked as though he had seen the end of the world. Alexei tightened his grip on his hunting rifle. "What are those things?" he whispered. The priest didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the forest. Finally, he spoke. "They are the lost." The cold wind suddenly strengthened. Snow swirled through the village streets. The red eyes drew closer. With every passing second, strange sounds emerged from the forest. Whispers, hundreds of whispers, human voices overlapping each other. Some were crying, some were laughing, some were begging for help, others were screaming. It sounded as if an entire city of dead souls had awakened within the trees. The priest led Isak and Alexei back into the church. Inside, he unlocked a hidden room behind the altar. The chamber was ancient, older than the church itself. Its stone walls were covered with faded paintings. The images depicted a terrifying story, one that had been hidden for centuries. In the first painting, a group of villagers stood around a giant pit deep inside the forest. Something enormous was emerging from the darkness below. The artists had never fully painted the creature. Only fragments were visible. Long limbs, countless eyes, a mouth stretching wider than the earth. Even incomplete, the image felt wrong to look at, offering gifts, animals, food, and eventually people. The creature accepted their offerings. For many years, prosperity followed. The winters became mild, the harvests flourished, the village thrived, but the price grew higher each year. The final painting showed a young woman standing before the pit. She wore a white dress. Long gray hair flowed down her back. Her face was beautiful, yet tears streamed from her eyes. The villagers pushed her toward the darkness. They had chosen her as the final sacrifice. The priest pointed toward the woman. "That was her," he said. "The witch?" Isak asked. The priest nodded. "Long ago she had another name." "What was it?" The priest hesitated, then answered, "Anya." According to ancient records, Anya had been a healer. She helped the sick, protected children, fed the poor. The villagers trusted her completely. But when the creature beneath the forest demanded a greater sacrifice, fear overcame gratitude. They chose Anya. They dragged her into the woods and threw her into the pit, alive. For 7 days and 7 nights, screams echoed from beneath the earth. Then, silence. The villagers believed she was dead. They were wrong, very wrong. Months later, Anya returned. At first, she appeared normal. She smiled, spoke softly, claimed she had survived. The villagers welcomed her back, and that was their greatest mistake. Because something had come back wearing Anya's face. One by one, people vanished. Families disappeared. Entire homes were found empty. Soon the village realized the truth. The thing they sacrificed had returned, changed, corrupted, hungry, and carrying the darkness of whatever lived beneath the pit. The priest opened another journal. Its pages contained horrifying sketches, pictures of victims, pictures of creatures, pictures of impossible things. One image caught Isak's attention, a drawing of a symbol, the exact same symbol found on the chained coffin. "What does it mean?" Isak asked. The priest looked uneasy. "It marks a guardian. A guardian. Someone reborn again and again." The room became silent. Then realization struck Isak, his heart pounding. "You mean me?" The priest nodded. Every generation, one person returns. Returns from what? The priest's voice dropped to a whisper. Death. According to the journals, the original Isak Plovik had not been an ordinary man. Nearly 2 centuries earlier, he had discovered the truth about the pit beneath the forest. He tried to seal it forever. The witch killed him before he could finish. But somehow his soul continued to turn. Again, again, and again. Always under the same name. Always with the same face. Always destined to fight the witch. The priest looked directly at him. You're not the first, Isak Plovik. A chill ran through Isak. How many have there been? The priest slowly turned to the page. The answer nearly stopped his heart. There were dozens. Photographs. Dozens of drawings. Dozens of records. All showing the same man. The same face. His face. Spanning 200 years. Suddenly, Alexei pointed toward the window. Something was outside. The 3 men looked and froze. The villagers had returned, every single one of them. They stood in the snow surrounding the church, motionless, silent, staring. Something was horribly wrong. Their eyes were completely white. No pupils, no irises, just blank white eyes. The villagers did not blink, did not move, did not breathe. They simply stood there, watching. Then all of them smiled at the same time. Hundreds of smiles appearing simultaneously. And together they spoke with a single voice. The witch's voice. Give him to me. The church walls trembled. The windows cracked. The villagers stepped forward as one. Thousands of footsteps moving together, like a single giant creature wearing hundreds of human bodies. The priest backed away. His face had become pale. They aren't themselves anymore. What happened to them? The old man swallowed hard. She's inside them. The church doors exploded inward. Wood flew across the room. The possessed villagers flooded inside. Not running, not shouting, walking, slowly, patiently, as though they already knew escape was impossible. The priest grabbed Isak's arm. There is only one chance left. Beneath the forest lies the pit. The door? Yes. The priest looked terrified. You must enter it. Before Isak could answer, a familiar laugh echoed through the church. The witch appeared at the far end of the room, standing among the possessed villagers, smiling, waiting. Then she spoke words that froze Isak's blood. Words no human should have known. Words his own father had whispered moments before dying years ago. The witch smiled wider and repeated them perfectly. Every syllable, every breath, every pause. She had been watching him his entire life. The witch slowly raised one finger and pointed toward the forest, toward the ancient pit, toward the darkness beneath the earth. Then she whispered, "Come see what remembers you." Outside, the ground split open once more. A colossal roar erupted from beneath the forest. Trees shattered. Snow exploded into the sky. For the first time in centuries, the thing beneath Silvlak Village began to rise. End of Part 4. The roar shook the earth. Windows shattered across Silvlak Village. Church bells crashed from their towers. Snow slid from rooftops in massive waves. The forest itself seemed to recoil in fear. And somewhere beneath the ground, something ancient was waking. The possessed villagers continued moving toward the church. Hundreds of blank white eyes stared innocently. The witch stood among them, smiling, waiting, as though she knew exactly where the story would lead. Because perhaps she had seen it happen before, again and again, across generations, across centuries. The priest grabbed Isak's shoulder. "You must reach the pit before it fully awakens." "What is it?" The old man's eyes filled with dread. No human language has a name for it. The church walls began cracking. Stone crumbled from the ceiling. Alexei loaded fresh ammunition into his rifle. Then we move now. The three men escaped through a hidden passage beneath the church. Behind them came the sound of hundreds of footsteps. The villagers were following. So was the witch. The snowstorm intensified. Visibility dropped to only a few feet. The forest swallowed them. Dark trees surrounded every path. Branches twisted overhead like skeletal fingers. The deeper they traveled, the quieter the world became. Eventually, even the wind vanished. That was when they found the footprints. Gigantic footprints, each one nearly 10 feet long, pressed deep into the frozen earth. Whatever had made them was enormous, far larger than any known animal. The tracks led toward the center of the forest, toward the pit. Hours passed, then the trees abruptly ended. The three men emerged into a massive clearing and stopped. The pit stood before them. It was far larger than Isak imagined, nearly half a mile wide, a perfect circle descending into endless darkness. Its edges were lined with ancient stone, covered in symbols older than any language. The air rising from below felt wrong. Not cold, not warm, something else. Like breathing air from another world. At the center of the pit floated hundreds of lights, tiny pale lights drifting upward through the darkness. At first, Isak thought they were lanterns. Then he realized the truth. They were faces, human faces, transparent, floating, silent. Thousands of them, trapped souls in the mist. The sight nearly broke. Children, women, elders, generations of victims, all drifting endlessly above the abyss, unable to escape, unable to rest. Then one of the floating faces turned toward him. A familiar face, his mother's. The voice was soft, weak, real, unlike the witch's imitation. This was truly her, or what remained of her. Tears filled his eyes. Before he could move, the priest stepped between them. Don't listen. What if it's really her? The priest's expression hardened. That place knows exactly what you want to see. Suddenly, the floating face smiled. Its features began stretching unnaturally. The eyes enlarged, the mouth widened, the skin torn. Within seconds, it transformed into a nightmare, then vanished into the darkness below. The pit had been testing him. A terrible laugh echoed behind him. The witch had arrived. She stood at the edge of the clearing. The possessed villagers surrounded her. Hundreds of pale faces stared toward the pit, as if witnessing a sacred ceremony. The witch's gray hair floated in the air, despite the absence of wind. And for the first time, she looked afraid. Not of Isak, not of the priest, not of Alexei. Something inside the pit frightened her. The ground suddenly split apart. A massive crack spread across the clearing. Ancient stone shattered. The earth groaned. Then a gigantic hand emerged from the abyss. The hand was unlike anything human. It appeared carved from darkness itself, covered with countless eyes. Every eye opened simultaneously. Every eye stared upward. Every eye blinked. Alexei screamed. The priest fell to his knees. Isak could not move, could not breathe, could not think. Then another hand emerged. Then another. The creature was climbing, slowly, patiently, like something awakening from a very long sleep. The witch stepped backward. For the first time, genuine terror appeared on her face. She whispered a word, a single ancient word, one the priest recognized instantly. His face drained of color. "What did she say?" Isak asked. The priest looked horrified. She called it Father. The realization hit like a hammer. The witch was not the master. She never had been. She was merely a servant, a child, a fragment of something far worse. The creature continued rising. Its true size became impossible to comprehend. It seemed larger than the forest itself, larger than the village. Its countless eyes illuminated the darkness. Its body shifted constantly, never maintaining a single shape. Something impossible. Something that hurt the mind to observe. The possessed villagers immediately dropped to their knees, every one of them, as though worshiping, as though welcoming a god. Then the creature spoke. The sound was not a voice, it was thousands of voices, millions, every scream, every whisper, every cry from every victim throughout history, all speaking at once. Isak felt blood trickle from his ears. Alexei collapsed unconscious. Even the witch covered her face, unable to endure the sound. Within the chaos, Isak heard words, clear words, directed only at him. You return. The creature. Images exploded inside Isak's mind. Not memories, older memories. Fragments of previous lives, previous deaths, previous Isaks. He saw dozens of versions of himself, fighting, running, dying, again and again and again, across centuries. Then he saw something else. The first Isak Plovik, the original, standing at the edge of the pit nearly 200 years ago, holding an ancient object, a silver seal covered in symbols, the very thing used to imprison the creature. And suddenly Isak knew the truth. The seal had never been destroyed. It still existed, hidden somewhere nearby, waiting. But before he could speak, a hand touched his shoulder, and his blood froze. Standing beside him was the dead man from the chained coffin. The Isak Plovik who had died 180 years ago. Yet he wasn't frozen anymore. He wasn't dead anymore. His pale eyes stared directly into Isak's. Urgent, desperate. The seal is here, the ancient Isak whispered. We still have one chance. Behind them, the colossal creature continued climbing from the abyss. Above them, the sky darkened unnaturally. And all around them, the possessed villagers began chanting in a language that had not been spoken for centuries. The final battle had begun. The world seemed to be collapsing. The colossal creature continued rising from the pit. Its endless eyes opened across its shifting body. Every blink darkened the sky further. Snow no longer fell. Instead, gray ash drifted from the heavens. The forest groaned. Ancient trees snapped and fell. The earth cracked beneath every movement of the thing emerging from below. Beside Isak stood the dead man from the chained coffin. The first Isak Plovik, the original, the one who had fought this horror nearly 2 centuries ago. His face was pale, his body flickered like a fading memory, yet his eyes burned with determination. We don't have much time. Where is the seal? Isak shouted. The ancient Isak pointed toward the center of the clearing, toward a huge stone monument buried beneath snow and ice. I hid it there before I died. The creature's voice thundered again. Isak. The sound shook the forest. The possessed villagers immediately turned toward him. Hundreds of blank white eyes locked onto their target. Then they began running. Not walking, running. The sight was horrifying. Men, women, children, elders, all sprinting toward him at impossible speed. Their mouths hung open unnaturally wide. Their limbs bent in disturbing directions. They no longer looked human, only the shells of humans. Alexei fired his rifle. The shots echoed through the room. Several villagers fell, but instantly stood again, unhurt, still running. The priest grabbed a fallen torch. The seal. Isak sprinted toward the stone monument. Behind him came screams, laughter, footsteps, and the impossible roar of the creature climbing from the abyss. As he reached the monument, he noticed ancient symbols carved into the surface. The same symbols that appeared Suddenly, memories flooded his mind. Not his memories, their memories. He saw dozens of lives, dozens of deaths. Every Isak came before him. A hunter, a soldier, a priest, a blacksmith, a teacher, all carrying the same burden, all fighting the same nightmare, all failing. Yet each one had left something behind, a fragment of knowledge, a fragment of strength, waiting for the next Isak, waiting for him. The monument cracked. A bright silver glow emerged from within. Isak dug through the ice with his bare hands, ignoring the pain, ignoring the blood, ignoring the chaos around him. Then his fingers touched metal. The seal. It was a circular silver object covered with ancient markings. The moment he touched it, the ground trembled violently. The creature roared. For the first time, it sounded afraid. The witch screamed, a truly terrifying scream. Not anger, not hatred, fear, pure fear. "No," she shrieked. "You cannot use it." Rushed forward, faster than ever. Alexei and the priest fought desperately to hold them back. But there were too many, far too many. Then tragedy struck. A possessed villager lunged toward the priest. The old man pushed Isak away, protecting him. The villager's hand pierced straight through the priest's chest. The priest collapsed. Blood stained the snow. Before dying, he looked at Isak and smiled. A tired but peaceful smile. Ended. Then he was gone. Rage surged through Isak. Not fear, not despair. Rage. The witch laughed, believing she had won, believing history would repeat itself once again, just as it always had. But she had forgotten something. Every previous Isak fought alone. This one carried the strength of all those who came before. The silver seal blazed with light. The ancient Isak appeared beside him once more. Then another, and another, and another. Dozens of Isaks stood together, transparent figures stretching across 2 centuries. Every guardian, every sacrifice, every failure, united at last. The creature saw them, hesitated. For the first time in centuries, it hesitated. The witch stepped backward. Confidence vanished. The ancient Isaks raised their hands. Their voices merged into one. Now, the seal exploded with brilliant white light. Beams shot toward the sky. The clouds split apart. The forest shook. The pit roared. The creature screamed. Its countless eyes began closing one by one. Its enormous body started collapsing in. Pulled back toward the abyss. The witch shrieked in terror. She tried to run. Glowing chains erupted from the seal, wrapping around her legs, her body, her neck. The faces trapped beneath her skin finally emerged. Thousands of faces, generations of victims, children, parents, grandparents, all freed at once. The souls rose into the sky like stars. The witch screamed as her stolen power left her. Her body began crumbling, turning to ash. For the first time in centuries, she looked human. Not a monster, not a nightmare, just a frightened woman. The woman named Anya. Tears rolled down her face. And then she vanished, gone forever. The creature made one final desperate attempt to escape. Its gigantic hand reached upward from the pit, toward Isak, toward freedom. The ancient Isak stepped forward, together, and pushed. The creature was dragged back into the abyss. Its roar echoed across the world, then faded, and faded, and faded, until only silence remained. The pit sealed itself, stone closed over darkness. The ancient prison was restored. The light disappeared. The spirits vanished peacefully into the sky. The possessed villagers collapsed unconscious, free at last. Morning arrived. The first sunrise Silvlak Village had seen in weeks. Golden light touched the snow. Birds returned to the forest. The terrible silence was gone. The ancient Isaks began fading, one by one, returning to whatever awaited them beyond death. The first Isak looked at him and smiled. "You were the last." Then he disappeared. Months later, Silvlak Village slowly recovered. Homes were rebuilt. Families reunited. Life returned. But some mysteries remained. No trace of the witch was ever found. No trace of the creature. No trace of the ancient pit. It was as if the nightmare had never existed. Years passed. Isak grew older. His hair turned gray. His scars faded. But he never forgot. One winter evening, many years later, he sat beside a fireplace, watching snow fall outside his cabin window. The village was peaceful, quiet, safe. Then he noticed something, a small wooden doll sitting on his windowsill. His heart stopped. Slowly he picked it up. The doll was old, very old. Its face resembled someone he had not thought about in years. The priest. Attached to the doll was a tiny piece of paper. A single sentence had been written upon it. "Some doors never fully close." Outside, far beyond the village, deep within the endless Russian wilderness, something laughed, very softly, and the snow continued to fall. The end.